With the looming release of Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, I think it's time to take a look back and talk about my favorite gaming company of all time, Nintendo. From its humble beginnings with the Famicom in the early 1980s, to the Nintendo Switch in 2018, Nintendo has been producing and manufacturing amazing content, and is, in my opinion, a much better company when compared to the likes of Microsoft or Sony. Machinima even stated that even though it didn't create the industry, Nintendo perfected it. My first gaming memories were playing Super Smash Bros. Melee on my GameCube, and being enthralled by the characters, the multiplayer, and the amazing amount of detail, which has only gotten better and grander with time. For the longest time, in fact, the company was neglected by most of the gaming industry, being relegated to the kiddie crowd. However, with the release of the Switch, that motto has been completely dropped. With such titles as Doom, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, and Bayonetta 2, these more than prove the company's willingness to change and evolve. Now don't get me wrong, the company still releases the likes of Mario and Zelda, both of which I'll play in a heartbeat. Those are two of my favorite gaming franchises after all. But the point here is that the company now appeals to both the adult crowd as well as the kiddie crowd, grasping a better share of the market in the process, as the Switch has won the console war for the company this generation. Not only that, but upcoming releases, such as Dark Souls of all things, only further amplifies this claim. So what exactly makes the company better than Microsoft or Sony? Well, first we have to take a trip back in time. First up, it's Microsoft. Nintendo's first competitive console against Microsoft was the GameCube in 2002, which, while boasting impressive visuals and amazing games, simply didn't do enough to win against Microsoft. The console war of that generation actually ended with Sony winning with its PS2, but Microsoft and Nintendo actually finished neck and neck, with Microsoft having the Xbox and Nintendo having the N64. Microsoft barely won that race, in fact. As for Sony, well, there really is no point in discussing Sony, since it's more of a film production company than a gaming one. But in essence, Sony's gaming studio is basically the same as Microsoft's. Both of them are money-hungry companies with no regard for the consumers that they hope to win their products. Oh my bad. With no regards for the consumers that they hope will buy their products. Getting back to the GameCube. Around the time of its launch, something major happened to the company that would change it going forward. The introduction of Satoru Iwata as the company's newest president. Iwata, who was a former programmer from HAL Laboratories, opened Nintendo to the world, with advents such as the Wii, segments such as Iwata Asked, and the creation of Nintendo Direct, which the company releases monthly in order to keep the public informed about upcoming releases, DLC, as well as other things. Now, that's not something Microsoft or Sony would even think of. They're too busy milking money through season passes and releasing unfinished and buggy games. Speaking of season passes, that brings up another topic, DLC itself. Now, this is going to be more targeted to the publishers that are directly under Microsoft and Sony, such as EA, so please bear with me. For those not in the loop, EA released Star Wars Battlefront in 2016, which I was suckered into buying on PC. I got the regular edition, which at that time was around $60. However, I found that not only was the game unfinished, but EA later demanded $50 additional from its consumers in order for them to gain access to that finished content. However, this year it's gotten much worse. In 2017, EA released the sequel, if you could call it that, Battlefront 2, which featured loot boxes, essentially glorified gambling, but as a technical term, it's known as a microtransaction. These microtransactions were, by the way, the only means of progression through the game. Obviously, this system is not appropriate for children, especially Star Wars fans such as myself. The backlash against EA was unprecedented, with the company eventually removing the microtransactions completely, but on a temporary basis. So how do Microsoft and Sony fit into all this? Well, if you look on the official wiki page, both of which I'll be showing now, both Battlefront 1 and 2 were published multi-platform, on the PS4, Xbox One, and on Windows PC, which are owned by Sony and Microsoft, respectively. Now, take a step back, and you could say, Sony and Microsoft could have said no, but no, they were probably too busy dreaming about how much Dr. Pepper they could buy with that much money. Where did that come from? Going back to Nintendo, at least they don't pull stunts like this. The games they release, such as the aforementioned Xenoblade Chronicles 2, are all richly layered and finished games. However, they have a little extra content to add on, such as the expansion to the story pack, which is set to release in October. And even with the hefty amount of extra content going into that game, the company only charges its consumers an additional $20 for the Season Pass, or the DLC bundle as the eShop puts it. Finally, Nintendo has an edge over Microsoft and Sony in the online services department. Now, what do I mean by this? This is unscripted, by the way. I mostly mean the online servers, for stuff. Now, Xenoverse 2 and stuff like that already have online servers on the Switch, but the reason why was because they were published by, they were already put on PC and stuff like that. So I believe that those servers are basically the ones, all the multiplayer from the Switch is going on the is going off of the PC servers. I'm not sure how that works, but regardless, they haven't announced a company yet. They haven't announced a service yet. Well, I mean, they haven't announced it, and it's going to be releasing soon. But it's much better. It's much better than Microsoft and Sony. As I prove here. Although it hasn't launched yet, the company is going to be charging $20 for a single year, as opposed to both Microsoft and Sony, who charge $60 yearly. To conclude, Nintendo has the edge against its competitors in nearly every way, from the endless creativity of its games, to its policies about DLC, and to even its eventual online service. To that end, I declare that Nintendo is, and forever shall be, the best video game company ever. I can hardly wait to see what it does next. However, if its track record is any indication, the company will take us all by surprise, and they'll win our hearts, as they have from the beginning.